IDOT's got a history of projecting need for various transportation projects, and also, also the politicians chiming in on all these jobs they're gonna bring. Well, there's been some failures. What's the Parkview, the Dennis Hastert Tollway that just recently went belly up? That's a similar project to this, which you profess such great need for. Now it's nothing, it's done. The Mid-America Airport, built out 25 miles east of St. Louis. That's been under plastic since 1998. That's another failure of IDOT. The traffic problems that we have now, you have not been able to handle properly. Why should we believe you? You work for the most corrupt state in the whole country. This is a criminal enterprise. This is not funny. This is bullying at its ugliest. Yeah, you talk sweet and you go do all these studies, but this is coercion, pure and simple. There's no need being shown by all these fancy studies you're doing. A lot of them have been cooked up anyway. We all know this. This is another boondoggle in the making. The projections you have for jobs are not going to be there, but the costs are going to be unbelievable. You will go way over budget on all of this, and who's going to, you don't even have a Illinois Tollway to work with like you did with 355. That took forever too, because you blew away the environmental impact studies and dragged your feet and tried to con everybody, and look at it now. A lot of those towns are not experiencing the growth that you promised them, although you made them fork over $1 million here, $1 million there. Why should we believe you? This is not a necessary project. This is just a government bullying at its ugliest. You take money in the first place coercively through taxes, and then you use it to harm communities for some projected project that you've been shown to fail at before. This is an absolute waste of money. Explain how. My question is, what is IDOT's take on their failures, these colossal failures that you've gone through, and your ongoing failure of Mid-America?
Well, I wouldn't say that I-35 was a failure. I-35 went.
I'm not talking about I-355. Well, for some communities that were promised growth along the interchanges and whatnot,
Well,
it hasn't panned out as projected. Like many of these other studies have been shown to be colossally overblown.
The issue with I-35 and what we show and actually what we've been saying on this particular road is that this road going in this particular area, for example, we're not showing a tremendous amount of growth between our no build and build. CMAP came up with very similar numbers between their no build and build. And so there's not a lot of growth projected along this corridor. Similar, I-35. So I-35 opened in 2008, right at the economic downturn. The growth that you experienced and saw there were off of roads that had the existing capacity to handle them. So you saw I-55 blow up, you saw 53, Weber, all those roads within the late 2000s, and still today you see all the distribution centers. The issue, we have a $100 million project on 159th Street, for example, trying to widen that. The roads that, when you put in I-35, weren't designed to handle expansion. So you look at Silver Cross Hospital. We asked them for in the tens of millions of dollars to repair US Route 6. So you got to get a developer that is actually has enough money to improve US Route 6 through there in order to put a hospital. And that Silver Cross did. So all of the widening that you saw in US 6 with Silver Cross, that's all developer driven. So in time, and remember that only opened in 2008, you already have Silver Cross there, you have some other improvements that we're making as far as widening some of the existing arterials. But we're seeing very similar effect on this. It'll take a lot of time if it does develop within this area. So then
the problem is it's tied to the hip to the Piazzone Airport, which is a huge white elephant that it's not really needed.
Well, there's
and that's why it's situated where it is now. I mean, wasn't it earlier on they were going to hook up with the Illinois Tollway and come down from 355, continue on to Piazzone, and then on to Indiana? What happened to that? Because there was development in Mokina? So you're just cherry picking who you're going to put the gun sights on for this?
Between that was about 10 years ago. That was actually in the late 90s. They looked at the South Freeway, right, which was north of the South Suburban Airport. And at the time, 10 years later, there's been a substantial amount of development that changed where this road could even be placed. South Suburban Airport was a constraint to the study as far as where you can place the road. The amount of traffic coming from the South Suburban is not a whole lot, because we use just the inaugural, which is one runway, 4 terminals. So you're not looking at a substantial amount of traffic. The substantial amount of traffic that is clogging the entire system up north on I-80, I-55 is, a lot of it's coming from approximately 150 freight distribution areas. Since then, there's been about 150 freight distribution areas that have opened up. And so you can see them as you drive I-57, you see them in Manhattan. You see Center Point, which went through, they're between 10 to 16,000 a day is what they currently do today, existing. This one over here, we projected 10 by the year 2040. That's a modest amount that they're projecting for that intermodal. But you also have freight distribution centers that open up just down the road in Mantino. Those all opened up, and you're seeing more and more developments along I-65 opening up. The whole area has changed within the last 15 years considerably. So what was a good idea 15 years ago, or actually it was deemed to still be very hard. They think widening I-80 would have done it. The study, the department has spent a considerable amount of money widening I-80. From US 30 all the way over to the border, including building all the way up to 41, we've widened it within the last 5 years in 2008. We widened almost every nook and cranny we can. We can't widen it any further. INDOT themselves has invested heavily. They've invested hundreds of millions of dollars in the I-65. I-80 interchange themselves. There's really no place else to go on that end from I-80 from US 30 through 65. There's really no place to expand.
All these terminals and whatnot, these are basically invasive species of this farming area. And to cater to that and make the future this ultra-reliance on this dead technology and fuel, fossil fuel future is just choking the whole life out of Will County and into Lake County. The whole thing is like a Berlin Wall through this whole area, to us, and to everyone around. The water, the crops, the children, the noise, the pollution, all these horrible things that are come to this. And who's going to benefit? Foreign corporations that run these who run this tollway? It's not going to be us moving Chinese junk all around. What's that do for the people that actually live in these areas? It diminishes the quality of their life. It doesn't provide them anything positive. Yeah, there might be a few jobs for them, but it's destroying this whole area. After we've been the shepherds of this area for several generations. And that's why it's so pristine out here. You're coming in here to destroy this area, basically. Yeah, you're trying to be nice about it, you can do this. But it's a top-down coercive push by government, a gross overstepping of government, especially Illinois, which is so in debt and so in need of dealing with other problems and everything else. You don't use our money to destroy our lives. That's insane.
This is greatly encouraging.
It's immoral, basically, I'm saying. The morality of it is not there. There's no real argument. It's like bullying on the playground. You can't kick someone and take their lunch money and then do good with that money.
It used to be where, when I first moved out here, Will County had a policy of, we don't want urban sprawl. So you don't let people in, you let the truckers in. I'm sorry, if you want to do something smart, why don't you widen Wilmington Road? That'll be a direct route from all I-55 all the way to I-57. It needs to be redone anyway. Instead of building this monstrosity, taking people's land who do not want to sell it, landlocking land. There's a lot of land out there that's floodplain. I don't care what you do as far as pumps and ditches, it's going to be a mess. And as far as tolls go, I used to be a trucker. Now, I know a lot of people who used to haul containers. You say, or the union says, whoa, we're going to use your toll road. A good deal of those truckers are not union. They are not going to use the toll road. They're going to come right down Peatone-Wilmington Road. So you're better off to fix that, maybe widen it a little. You don't have to take maybe a little bit of property from someone. you're not gonna landlock people and take them right to 57, and then you can figure out what to do from there. This is an utter waste of my tax money. My tax money. And it really ticks me off if you can't tell. Yeah. And you're not gonna find a person in this room that's going to agree with you, the governor, the state, no one. Good. You say you're listening to us, bull hockeys.
Well, we did in tier one, we looked at widening Wilmington, years ago, we looked at widening that and.
Only Manhattan. and
No,
all
but
that.
160.
Oh, you mean taking it all the way across to one?
Indiana, 'cause we
Yeah,
took
you'd
it all
have
the way
to go
across.
a bunch of new route because
What we
there's
saw was
no,
the substantial amount of housing impacts. There are a number of houses right off Wilmington Via.
If you even just made it a 3-lane road with a middle turn
And
lane,
we weren't getting the travel. I was looking at
oh,
2
isn't
lanes
that
each
just
direction.
tough toenails?
Well, we did look at that alternative.
Tell China to take their containers
And keep it.
and take them back to China. And get rid of NAFTA and bring back our work. That's what Illinois and the United States needs to do. That, not promoting this garbage.
Well, and Will County does do a substantial amount of manufacturing themselves, and we do export quite a bit out of those intermodals. We just cleared 70 million last year, bushels going out of those intermodals now, so there are a lot of grain being exported now.
Yeah, but you're gonna take.
But it's
the
not
grain.
going to
Farm
China
grows the
because they won't
grain.
take
Well, it's
GMOs.
more taking more of the, coming from Indiana, and then all the other areas are now utilizing the containers. So, yes, we are showing, what's the total acreage, about 5,000? We're at 50, somewhere between 5,000 and 6,000 acres, yes. We do have a substantial amount, that's why we're doing environmental impact statement. But you look at one of those intermodal centers, for example, the one over here in Ridge, they currently own about 3,000, Centerpoint owns 3,500. If you look at the development that is occurring today, and literally, every time I turned around on a northern corridor, there was another 1 million square foot building that just got put up. They actually put one right where we were connecting the old A3 S2 corridor. It came out of nowhere. It was in Joliet. They just put a 1 million square foot building, and so they're, what we're showing, and we're not going to solve all the trucking problems in this area. At this point, there's too many trucks.
If you're moving those trucks across this road, and where is the benefit for the people along the road?
Exactly.
What kind of revenue or development are we going to get that's going to offset the losses?
As well as, Steve, you're saying that we export a lot of corn. A lot of this corn comes from, and I'm using a low figure here after looking at your slide. Originally, we were told it was going to take about 2,600 acres of farmland. If the Illiana is going to remove approximately 26 acres of farmland, that's removing it from our food chain. The average yield of corn in Will County, Illinois is 178 bushels per acre. So if you remove 2,600 acres, that is, or 2,600, you're removing 462,800 bushels of corn from our food chain. I know you don't understand that, so let me correlate it into terms you might understand. 1 bushel of corn equals 38 boxes of cornflakes. If you're going to remove 2,600 acres of farmland from the food chain annually, this is produced annually, not a one-time deal. This is every year these farmers produce this amount of crop. You're removing 17,586,400 boxes of cornflakes from the shelf that you go and buy it from every year. You don't think that's a substantial impact to our food chain? And have you studied the impact of the food chain? And then you're talking about doing geotechnical work come this fall. You better not be doing that work in some farm field until the crop is out. Because that's how we put bread and butter, how we pay our bills, and that's how we feed you. That's how you get that box of cornflakes. So you seem to be lacking in a little bit of what you're studying here. You're talking about exporting all this corn. Well, they're gonna come up a little bit short on what they're supposed to be exporting, because a lot of that corn that's exported is produced in that 2,600 acres, and you're telling me tonight that it's gonna be more. You're saying 2,893 acres of farmland. So that number's even higher. It's not just farmland out here, it's part of the food chain.
Yes. And we
Just
are
because
showing-
it doesn't impact some subdivision up north, well, what do you think them people in that subdivision eat? The corn that's growing out here in this farmland, it's not tumbleweed like Jesse Jackson and the rest of these cronies out here. And I got people keep saying, oh, it's just farmland.
It's vacant land.
It's vacant land. It's not. It's productive land.
Not only that, it's not just corn it's producing. What do green plants produce? They
It's
take
not-
in carbon dioxide and they produce oxygen. An intangible benefit nobody studies.
Yes, and we.
And
I don't
nowhere in your
think-
study, or nowhere in any of these PowerPoints, at every dog and pony show that we've attended, have I, because that's what we've coined it, because we get the same, basically we get the same lip service from you guys at every one of these presentations. We've had our meetings because there's supposed to be a federal quota, and there were this many people here, and they're stakeholders. Well, most of us stakeholders are not willing sellers, and we're not interested in generations upon generations of farmers out here that have taught their children and the next generation a way of life that people up in the office don't understand. These people out here work 365 days a year to produce food, not only for our families, but for your family and our country and the world, because boy, those intermodals with those trucks, where are they shipping it to? They're shipping it out of the country. And that is a cultural heritage that you're not studying and you're not taking into consideration out here. And that's why the people are ticked off. These people have lived out here for over 100 years. A lot of these farms. My farm itself, as well as how many other people could raise their hand, my farm was built in the 1890s. So there were generations, and it wasn't my family, but it was generations before me. And so each generation is carrying on this way of life that isn't for everybody. But it's our way of life out here. And nowhere in your study, or any environmental study, is that being taken into consideration, because it's a way of life you don't understand. Food, well, I go to the grocery store and there's a box of cornflakes. Well, what happens when these millions of boxes aren't there? You might not get that. And them cornflakes, boy, the price of them is going to go up now because we got a shortage. You're not taking into consideration the effect of this so-called vacant land, which isn't. It's productive farmland. And it's going in them damn containers and being shipped out of them intermodals. Along with the fact that you're saying that this road's going to have 29,000 trucks a day, is a figure that I heard. I was at a meeting a couple weeks ago, and Roosevelt Road and Ogden Avenue have more traffic on a daily basis. It's just how life is. If the state would take the tax dollars, instead of, you guys have already wasted $35 million of our tax dollars. And it's everybody, it's the entire state's tax dollars. It's not just the people in this room. It's not just the people that are going to be affected. It's everybody's tax dollars. Everybody that pays taxes in the state. Not the state, though, because they don't pay their taxes on the land that they grabbed out here already. You've wasted $35 million. Do you know how many roads you could have repaired, you could have maintained, and you could have improved if you need to put a turn lane in for $35 million? My father-in-law right next to me this spring stopped the state truck out here on 50. Well, actually, he didn't have to stop them because they were sitting in the truck, doing nothing. And he says, hey, am I glad to see you? We got some dangerous potholes at some of these intersections. Can you guys fill them? He's the road commissioner out here in Will Township. Bruce, I'd love to fix them, but you know what? There's no money in the budget for cold patch or hot patch because you're wasting it on some goofy study instead of being practical. And the state, it was all in the paper, the state received a D recently on their roadways. So the state has taken their roadways and allowed them to deteriorate to dangerous conditions. It's going to be just like Route 45 was a couple years ago, and it took somebody to die and lose their life out there before they fixed it, because everybody was driving on the shoulder because the gaping holes on the roadway were so deplorable and the condition was so bad. The state should be ashamed of themselves at the condition they have allowed their roadways to go down to. And you're telling us you want to spend, well, now your study says $1.6 billion, but the CMAP study says that's grossly underestimated. And I remember a meeting I think we were at with Farm Bureau, and I only heard that figure one time, and then mum's the word. I believe the figure you used was $26.7 billion, which is probably more realistic. I'd have to look back at my notes and see when that was. But now it's down to $1.6 billion. Now you've added all these extra interchanges and frontage roads. The state should be ashamed of themselves for not being fiscally responsible to maintain their roads. What would happen if the schools have to maintain the schools to make sure they're safe for the children? IDOT needs to maintain their roadways so it's safe for us to go to work or go to the store to buy the cornflakes that might not be on the shelf. The state needs to take their money, they need to do their job and keep their roadways in proper condition. A D? And then you're trying to solicit outside business people to do business. Who's going to do business with somebody that gets a D on their report card? They can't fill a pothole. I mean, it's disgusting. In a time where we should all be fiscally responsible, and in an economy where we've all, hey, we're all pinching pennies and thinking twice about, should I buy this? Do I really need it or not? I think we need to be more fiscally responsible, and before anything like this would be considered, I think you should fix the roads you have and maybe get an A on your report card for your existing infrastructure instead of a D.
Well, to answer some of those statements, our program, every year we go out and yes, what's happening across the country right now is that the interstates were built in the 50s. It's been 50 years. A lot of them have to be reconstructed at a very large expense. We do continue to upkeep our roads. But the issue that we have is that we have, I think, the third largest transportation network, the third largest transportation network in the nation. We do have a lot of roads. And that is what we have. We also have declining fuel, money coming in from MFT funds and the federal government as well. So there is some issues that we're experiencing already within this area. A standard resurfacing job is supposed to last anywhere between 8 to 12 years. What we're seeing on some of these roads, because the trucks are beating them up so bad, is that's what's happening.
A standard resurfacing job. Anybody that lives out in this area, we don't get a standard resurfacing job up here. We get an election Band-Aid resurfacing job. They don't properly grind it down. They don't properly fix any kind of drainage issues, whether there's culverts underneath it or base issues. They don't fix that. It's an election year, let's put 4 inches of surface over it and call it good. And then let's put how many pounds of salt down and destroy it. And by spring, but the election's over, so we'll wait till the next election and we'll give it another Band-Aid. Standard, I've worked construction for years. It's a joke the way, it's not a standard resurfacing job, it's an election, color it black and and we'll get a vote.
It's called a smart resurfacing job, and what we try to do is just.
Smart?
That's what it.
You gotta have level binder and some binder down to hold that surface. That surface isn't meant
Yes,
to hold the
What
trucks.
we try to do is we have,
You know what
like you
level binder
mentioned,
is?
there's numerous roads. There's thousands upon thousands of miles of roads. So we try to give better treatment to the roads that have higher ADT. And so those, like the state expressways that we resurface almost every 8 years. So we just recently did I-55, like 5 years ago we did I-290. Pretty soon Edens and Kennedy will be up again. Those do take a lot of resources to obtain roads that see 150, some odd thousand ADT. At the same time, we have thousands upon thousands of miles of 45, 50, Cicero, Roosevelt. We have actually a really good program of a multi-year. I-80, for example, which is getting pounded right now with the amount of truck traffic that it's seeing. We have 60 million that we identified in the program to replace 5 of those structures. We're just at I-55 over Des Plaines over right now, which is why it's down to 1 lane. We constantly inspect our structures. We constantly make sure that they are really up to handle the traffic loads within the area. We have a robust program for that, but you have to understand that we have one of the largest transportation networks in the country. We also have a very, with the tax base that we have a 55-45 split, which means that the rest of the 9 counties, this is the state law, the rest of the 9 counties, even though we have a majority of the roads up in Chicagoland, we have to give, I think it's 45 or 55, Rick?
55 to the downstream.
55 to everybody else, which has a lot less roads. That's because of the state law. And so we actually have, so every time, for example, we get any funding, we actually have to give 55 downstate. And that's to all the other
Well, they
districts.
get roads too,
Yeah,
but
they-
instead
They
of
don't have
this
the amount and the
resurfacing or
extent.
fixing 8 years, that's the longevity you're gonna give a road.
Yeah.
Why don't you take a ride north of the border
We
to
can't.
Wisconsin? When they,
They have a lot less road network out there.
They got a lot of
don't have
roadways, but-
45,
and when they-
55 splits.
but if you go up there, when they redo a road, they do it right. They shut the road down, they divert traffic. It might take them a year to get that done, but they go through, they shut it down, they go down, they analyze everything down to the base, they fix it right, and their roads are lasting way more than 8 years.
Yeah, and it would be
Okay.
nice to reconstruct every single road we have. We can't.
But when you are redoing it, instead of giving it this 8-year Band-Aid or the election, pave over, 4 inches of surface isn't gonna hold anything. Not when you put how many hundreds of thousands of pounds of salt down.
What year did you redo Route 45 again, just recently?
Just a couple years ago.
I'll have to verify that one.
Okay, so 2010, more or less?
2009. They got no sub-base, it probably only lasts about 4 years.
I personally, and when I say personally, I was out there with my semi, my load of asphalt in 1990 and surfaced all of Route 45 with Crown Trig from Will County to the south here to Will County to the north border. 1990. Now, 8 years somehow does not make that, multiplication for me.
Yeah.
So what you need to do is take that 35 million you've already thrown away on this stupid project and put it towards roads. Now, I know what road use tax and license plates cost for a semi. If Illinois actually took that money and put it towards the roads that we are supposedly tearing up, you would have more than enough money to fix them. So we don't need this road, we need Illinois to be responsible, to take the money that has already been given you and fix the roads. We don't need this.
The money that's coming in from that will not cover everything, it won't let us reconstruct everything that we have on our plate. And
I don't know how 20 years, 8 years
What
though.
the federal government is now doing is with MAP 21 and the increase in loans that they're giving
Yeah,
out.
Route 52 headed to Wilton Center is somebody will get killed this fall, and then maybe it'll get fixed, because it's deplorable. You can't do, Sean, you're one guy that has been at several of these presentations.
Sure.
I asked him one night, I said, hey, Sean, I said, you've been down 50? I came in on 52 tonight and I was behind this truck and he was only doing 50 miles an hour. I said, well, take your car out there without a truck being in front of you. You can't do 55 down it. It's dangerous. Somebody's gonna get killed.
And that
But you guys don't live around here. It's not gonna be one of your
That
friends.
52 is actually in our program. It's in our multi-year program. It's in our 5-year cycle. The 52 between 45 and
Your
through
cycle
Wilton
has
Center.
been deplorable for way more than 5 years.
And if it took you 20 years to resurface Route 45, excuse me,
Yeah.
that ain't 8 years, and it's not 5 years. So you can talk all you want, but, you know, Illinois is not doing its job the right way. So why take money and put it into something that by the time you get it done, you're gonna be resurfacing it again?
Well,
Excuse me, sorry.
I'd like to also address real quick though the cost of the road. The cost of the road is 1.3 billion. That's based on
That's what
actual
you're
plan.
proposing.
1.3.
You can figure at least took
50
that,
miles?
at least.
Yeah.
Not according to
happened.
cranes and CMAP, you know.
You can stack up recent projects. The one in Morgan County was only at 2 million a mile about. The one I-69 portion was around, what, 2 million a mile? Was another 2 million a mile? We have 9 million a mile. That's what we're projecting on this particular route. So it is, you know, for this particular project, that, you know, we can certainly sit here and stack up other projects that might have been more expensive or projects that have been more cheaper per lane mile. What we did as part of our analysis of coming up with the 1.3 was actually take detailed cross sections, come up with structure types, structure sizes, actual quantities and pay items. We currently, later this month, have a Fed review on that, so we'll have a better handle on the particular price. But we're fairly confident. We both have IDOT and NDOT reviewing this. It was based on bid tabs of recent constructions from Arsenal. And so it's a very thorough cost analysis, more so than just stacking up projects in the area. You know, I-55, for example, was a 6-lane urban section, a lot of drainage features as far as inline detention.